Goeiemôre dames en here, my naam is Roger Viljoen van die lelike plek van Bloemfontein se platteland. Jokes. Hi guys, I'm Roger. I'm born in Cape Town. I know I can look Chinese, but I was born here with the whole English vibe. Grew up in Rondebosch, and about 2 years ago, I in a distraught sort of looking way, came to speak to Murray. And obviously, like Eugene mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, he said, Roger, what is it that you want? And I had quite a simple answer. It was, I just want my time back. I think it's probably a question that lots of us ask. You know, we get to run and do a whole lot of stuff, and some of us are successful in the various areas of our life. But one of the things that we always want to get back is our time. And 2 years later, to his word, he said it'll take about 18 to 24 months to get your time back. And this is kind of going to be the story of some of the key points of that learning. But I've got the line here that says, the greater purpose retired at 29. I know that the modern culture that we live in tries to go for, oh, I'm retired, I'm luxury, I get to do whatever I want. The greater purpose of being retired at 29 is so that we can focus on the bigger things. I remember that when I was 28 years old, I was stuffed. I felt broken. I felt like I was extremely young at the age of 45 or something. And I just sat there going, am I going to be the sort of guy that's going to be stressed out in the years to come, the way I can't give the best of who I am to my family, that I don't have yet, but hopefully will have? Will I be the kind of guy that's going to be too tired, too anxious, too self-consumed in business, not to give the best of my time to my children, best of my time to my friends, to other people that need it? And fixated on that point, I decided I have to change something now if I'm not going to continue this for the rest of my life. Make sense? So that's the greater purpose, the greater heart behind why I say what I say. So obviously, as businessmen's objectives, you know, a nurse's thing would be, flip, I want to help as many people as possible in their health. An actor would be, I want to bring as much entertainment and joy to people. I guess our line is make more money with less time sustainably. All on the same page? I'd agree. Great stuff. Thanks for the crowd participation. Before we jump in, I'm going to give you a bit of a brief look at the industry that I'm in. The funny thing is, when most people see Chinese guys that look thin, they probably think doctor, IT, accounting. I remember the first time I ever went to a vleisverspreiders, what is it? Meeting, gemeenskap? No, community, whatever. I rocked up in Paarl, and all the Afrikaans guys were there with their Land Rovers, and their high-felt schooner and their long brown socks and their khaki with a comb in the pants. And I pitched up there, my dad's in a Mercedes-Benz all dressed up all nice, and I realized, flip, I live in a different world. You know, Chineseman with an Afrikaner in Bloemfontein, it felt like it was a van der Merwe joke. But all in all, I'm in the meat industry. So Atlantic Meat is our retail stores. We supply the township market. Obviously, it's the growing part of the economy at the moment through Africa, etc., etc. So that's Buddha Joe, one of our salespeople, and you'll find it absolutely incredible. Some of these mamas come and buy 4,000 to 8,000 rand cash per day. So we're talking about some of these ladies that walk around all bundled up looking like their mamas without anything, and they're just holding these massive wads of cash. They buy it, and then they've got 10 stands all over the townships. They drop off meat, and then they come back and they buy some more, and they drop off some more. Amazing. So that's our first store that we had with all the crowds of people. Obviously, the way we structure our business is high volume, low margins. This is our Claremont store with the new front branding. Looks so nice and dainty. Anchor Foods is our manufacturing arm that just produces brivors, boerewors, burgers, processed meats, etc., etc., etc. So you can see those are some of our workers. That's all the brivors that they make. She's a happy bravos lady. Smoky Joe's is one of the sauce and spices factories that we just brought over. Obviously, it's a natural extension of our product range in doing meat. And then Warr is our new concept store into the upper LSM with fillets and biltong, etc. So now you know my world. So let me just get to the stats. I think my strengths finest things were strategy, futurist, communicator, woo, which I don't like woo, because woo makes you sound like you're like, hey, how you doing, you know? I like friendship builder. I'm so Chinese. Is there woo in him? The answer is woo. No, I'm not woo, I'm Warr. So I prefer saying like the friendship connector. And then the final one, responsibility. So I'm generally a stats person. Like numbers, I like structure, I like bring simplicity down to something that people can understand and communicate it well with a bit of heart. So here are the big numbers. 2006 when I took over, I was 22 years old, 100 employees, sorry. Now we're 220 employees. We had one site in Maitland, now we've got 8 sites, 50 million annual turnover, but making losses of 300,000 a month. So we could call that dead money. Now we're at 120 million annual turnover, profits of a lot more. Obviously, I'm not going to divulge that information now. We used to do 100 tons per month, and now we do 500 tons per month. I used to work 65 hours a week, and now work 16 hours a week. That's just on the new Bolton store that we're going for. The reality of this thinking is that I asked Murray before, give me a demographic of the people that I'm speaking to, and he said 65% of the people probably are in a space of going, how in the world do I get off the flipping rat? I was trying to mix my things. How to get off the horse, how to get out of the rat race. It's galloping away with me. And the thought is, I also understand that the average annual turnover of companies in this room is probably around 500 million, if you didn't know that for yourself. So I know I'm quite far at the bottom of the bar, probably the bottom quartile of everyone sitting here. But I think the line that we're trying to bring to is a different perception in terms of how we regard the importance of life. The bottom thing that I want to focus on is 65. You got to really tell me if I'm speaking too quickly, because in China, everything happens quickly. It wasn't a joke, it's true. So 65 hours per week, worked in 2006, now 16 hours per week, up until about 2 months ago, in which I was doing 2 hours per week. But I put it up because I've ended up trying to start a whole new business thing. Before I carry on going, I want to tell you a story. Most of the time when I speak, it's stories in theory. I love research and I love stories. So this is the thought. I was at the airport years ago, before 2006, around 2005. And I'm sitting with my dad in my little red Taz. My dad can't speak English. If he sat here, you'd probably understand about 20% of what we said. So I'm sitting with my dad and I see the traffic cop coming down the road. And he's knocking on the windows and he's giving people traffic fees, fines, etc., etc. So eventually he gets down to me, but before he does, I take up my driver's license, I'm sorted, everything's in order. Look to my dad smiles at me, but he's like Mr. Miyagi, so he's like, really, he's a cute guy. And I remember saying to the guy came and knocked on the window and he said, where's your traffic disc? And the traffic disc is that little circle thing at the bottom left. And I know it's 500 Rand spot fine if you don't have your traffic disc. And I squinted my eyes to the left, didn't say anything. And my heart just started beating. I was like, flip it, $500 just because I left it on the table. So after a while, the guy says to me again, excuse me, where's your traffic disc? So I just know it's not there. So I allow integrity to rise up inside of me. All the principles of being trustworthy and honorable and righteous come into me. And I look up to the man, I say, sorry, I don't speak English. I remember the guy looked at me, he's like, sorry? I was like, sorry, I don't speak English, huh? So the guy said to me, okay, I'll give you a warning, but next time, next time. I was like, oh, thank you very much. My dad's busy going, you don't speak English? So anyway, after that moment, I realized something. I realized that people's behaviors will follow their perceptions. With new information, your behavior changes. Whatever you gather and understanding, your behavior will change. When you find out new information in the stocks, you're going to change your behavior. If you find out something that is more valued, you're going to change your behavior. Makes sense, right? Cause and effect. So the thought is, what is the principal thing that needs to drive our change of behavior so we can be those mothers and fathers, grandfathers with little pitter-pat kids running around? What is the driving thing? And what I think it is not so much about how to make more money. It probably is more of the thing of how to make more time. The question is this. The real thing is it revolves around time and the economy of time. So the thought is, who detects your time? What can't you make more of? How do you value your purchases? How do you value your time as a business person? My thought of who dictates your time, the reality is that if you don't dictate your time, someone else will. Principle. If you don't dictate your own priorities, someone else will. The person who shouts the loudest always gets the deal. One thing I noticed is when I started working at my dad's factory when I was 13 years old, and as I sat there, there'd be people always trying to get service, and the place would be packed. And I always wanted to see who was the person who always got served first. And the person who got served first was the guy that shouted. It was like, give it to me. Well, and no, but because so, and it was always you can hear me, hey? What's going on here, Wayne? Eugene, please sort him out. My 4-4's in the car. So you can hear me at the back there, Rich? Great stuff. So I'll carry on going. So the idea is who dictates your time is a lot of the question of Are you going to be the classic line? Are you going to be the voice, or are you going to be the echo? Are you going to be the sun, or are you going to be the shadow? Are you going to be the action or the reaction? Choose which you're going to be, because if you don't dictate your time, somebody else will do it for you. And you might even know, you might go, I'm the boss, I'm the executive, but the reality, if people are shouting for your time, problems are arising, they're going to dictate your time, and you're going to get sucked into that. It's going to get sucked away from your family, it's going to get sucked away from your brothers, your sisters, your friends, your children. It will happen. So you got to choose your line, you got to choose your priority, saying, this is what I want. Every year at the beginning of the year, I write a list. It sounds a bit selfish, but I try to block out all the other nagging voices in my life, and it's a list called What I Want. And on that list, I write, I want to. I want to work 3 hours a week. I want to have a da-da-da. And it's unadulterated, unaffected by other people, but it just brings clarity to know exactly the voices that I want to be speaking into my life, and not having all this other stuff. But obviously I get people to reevaluate. I don't want to be selfish and introspective and stuck around my own module. Make sense? So the other thought of what can't you make more of? T.D. Jakes said this wonderful line. He said, you can always make more money, you can always make more friends, but you can't make more time. Time just goes. Whether you like it or not, it's either going to work for you or it's going to work against you. One of the thoughts is, how do you value your purchases? Our modern day currency is, the way we value our house is 20 million rand, the car 500,000 rand, the holiday 30,000 rand. I'd put it to you that the better way to value it is time. The language you should be speaking is, that house cost me 20 years of my life, that car cost me 5 years of my life, that holiday cost me 16 months of my life. When you begin to speak that sort of language, you get a better understanding of your value of your time. Does that make sense? So the thought is, how do you value your time as a business person? My whole line is profit per hour. So all the way through my life, I want to mark how much money am I making per hour. So the question is, you either increase your income or you decrease your time. What I do is I fix my time. I've made a settlement. I will never, ever, for the rest of my life, work for a prolonged period for more than 2 days, for 8 hours a week, 8 to 16 hours a week, ever again in my life, for more than 2-3 months. And it has to be cut short. Otherwise, what will happen is you keep on increasing your time. So I'd rather skill up and fix my time. Make sense? So the bottom one at the bottom left corner is the end of 2006, after we were bankrupt, to what it is now in 2013. Obviously, I didn't put rands in there, but that's the units of money, just to give you a picture of the sort of the progressive line of going, hey, it is possible to do this, to change from one place to another. In answering the question is, okay, great, we got the theory, we got the concept of time and all that. How do we actually transition across practically? What does this mean? And I call this the 15. The 15 is made up of 15 key elements that I think businesses need to be able to look at stuff as a lens, to be able to analyze different components. Some of you might have your own models. This is the one that I use that's helped me, that I've developed through my own thinking with Murray over the last time. And the reality that is, over every business, there are 3 sections that we're going to jump on. There's going to be self-leadership. A business might be beautiful in strategy, beautiful in people, but if you're not able to lead yourself and you're the person staying the point, if you crumble, everyone else around you crumbles. Do we agree? Great. Second point is business strategy. I call that the inanimate. Those are the things like your marketing, your ROEs, your risk analysis, leveraging your advantage, brand positioning, market positioning, all that stuff that is the theory-based, the planning. It's the stuff that doesn't require people right involved. It's the theoretical. The third part, business leadership, is the people side. In every single thing, you're going to have your people, whether you're in marketing or hospitality or whatever the thing is, you're going to have your strategies, you're going to have your processes, but you're also going to have your people. How do you lead your people to apply these things? Make sense? Everything in your business, I'd imagine, would fit into that. If it doesn't, please let me know so I can change my model. But I'd imagine everything in your life is going to fit into one of those 3 categories. So under each one of those, I've put up a couple of points. So under self-leadership, there's 5 points. I'm not going to go through all of them. But under self-leadership, the cardinal things that have helped me free up my time is grit, which I'll go into later. It's about fixing your time, increasing your skill. Finding mentors, as Eugene spoke about, just finding people to speak into your life. Replenish yourself is, as long as you're buoyant, that spillover effect goes onto other people. And then the thoughts of general well-being is, when you're buoyant consistently, it tends to cause the rest of your company to be buoyant as well. Under business strategy, simplicity leads to scalability is a tagline that I love using. Under that, it's got the classic of Pareto, focus on 80-20, leverage your advantage for market expansion. If you're good at something, get better at it. Extend your strengths for market penetration and sustainability. If you're good at something, get better at it. And the last one is information is power. The more information you gather, the stronger your position is going to be to affect changes. Makes sense? And the last one is business leadership. It's about attracting leaders. Why do people follow? Who are the right employees? Position people in their strengths, etc., etc. If you do want to hear the rest of it, you can hire me out for 5,000 Rand an hour for free for the first 5 minutes. Eugene, I picked up your point there. So in all of this, we're kind of going, so we got all this information. How do we condense it down into something that actually we can take home and become something solid that we can digest and go, hey, this is the real deal? So I've taken the top 3, which I think are the most pivotal. So if you're going to write anything down on a napkin, stick it in your brain, email someone, put on a post-it note, send it via Twitter, Facebook, whatever, these are your 3. Grit under self-leadership, simplicity leads to scalability under business strategy, and attract leaders under business leadership. So we're going to dive straight in. Ready? Great stuff. Thank you for the one. Solo flight. So grit. I'm going to go quickly through some of this stuff. My dad's story in a nutshell. Born in China, worked in the rice paddies. I mean, he was classic Mr. Miyagi. Born in China, rice paddies, carried rocks for a living. At the age of 24, stowed away on a ship, in a container ship docked in PE with an empty suitcase because all this content had been stolen, barefoot, pants and a shirt. And he somehow got all the way up to Johannesburg where his brother was working on a farm, worked on a farm there. From there became a taxi driver. Some guy offered him a job to cook, so he started cooking. Someone else heard about him cooking, so they offered him a restaurant down in Cape Town. He took up the offer and said, I've got no money to pay for it. The guy said, no, that's fine. As long as you work here, you can pay back with the profits. So my dad did that, and they all settled down in Cape Town. In 1983, the world was irrevocably changed when I was born. Why are you laughing? So from 1983, my story is totally different to my dad's. My dad was hardworking, like an ox, gets his head down. I was born silver spoon in the mouth, happy, lucky sort of man. Everything's kind of going along. And I remember, kind of grow up, southern suburbs. You don't know what's going on in the world. Your dad makes some money, you begging for money to go buy like the latest Lego set or whatever it is. Sister buys the Barbie doll, life's fun. And I remember in about 2004, 5th of October, I had this weird sort of thing of always going to the newspaper and reading the good stories and the bad stories. And I cut out the bad stories going, flip, one day I hope this will change. One day I hope the little child's not going to get raped. One day I hope that the people are going to have housing. One day I hope, and I'd always look at it. I actually made a little scrapbook. Did this every single night at 7 o'clock, 7:30, as I read the newspaper. And on one of these nights, I remember hearing these 2 big bangs. I was like, I looked around, thought, oh, it's car exhaust, and I heard my dad screaming. So I ran downstairs and saw my mom's car had crashed. And I went to my dad, and my mother wasn't conscious, and my dad was in hysterics. He couldn't really speak, and people started rushing out of the houses. And I was trying to figure out what in the world my dad was blabbing about. So I opened the door, the cops started pitching up, pulled my mom out, and I saw there was blood on the car seat. And then I finally got it. There was an armed robbery. And they were doing the driveway hijacking where they run behind you and shoot you as you try to go into the house. And I pulled my mom out, realized she was shot, and started doing CPR on my mom, holding my hands. I was a 21-year-old little boy then. And I remember that time. It's quite a thing when you see your mother. She's looking at you, trying to speak to you, but unable to. You're kind of thinking, what are you trying to say, Mom? What's the last thing? And you're kind of just holding her and like, oh my gosh, she's disappearing. After about 10 minutes, my mother died in my arms. And I remember just sitting there going, hey, is this it? Is this it? Is this how it happens? My dad came afterwards and he was just absolutely distraught on his knees and he was shouting out, what do I do? I made everything with you. I'm going to lose everything without you. What do I have? And I thought that from that, I was like, flip, this is hectic. After that, I was broken, spent a year doing my thesis work at honours at UCT. And at the end of that, I remember going, okay, let me go back into the business. Let's get this thing sorted out. Dad's old. Sorry, he's young but wise. He's 65 at that age. And I was thinking, okay, let me go help Dad out. So I went into the company. And when I actually looked at it, I found that it was insolvent. I went to my business mentor at the time and I said, look at it and look at my docs. And he said, yo, you're insolvent. You guys are losing money rapidly. Obviously, I knew all the theory from going to university, but it's nothing, like the school of life. At the stage when I started doing the maths, I realized that we were losing 200,000 Rand a month on average. And the clock was ticking. It was getting worse and worse and worse. My dad couldn't read any financial statements. So he was a total bluffer. I remember he can't even read English. So we'd sit down there as a youngster and I'd go into his office and he'd get his coffee and his glasses and his big chair, and he'd spend 2 hours reading the financials. So I came into my dad the one day. I said, Dad, I know you can't read. What are you doing? He looks at me and he goes, The accountant doesn't know that. So my dad did this funny way. He'd bluff it, he'd move things. And what happened was we just didn't realize that the suppliers were giving us extra credit extensions, and we were just pushing the overdraft limit. Because that's how my dad would know anything, is if people started shouting, saying we want our money, then he'd be able to gauge what was going on in the company. It's a ridiculous way of running, but he did it. And I remember trying to figure that out. So I looked at the financials, like, Dad, we're insolvent. He's like, it can't be. So I started going through the financials with him, and it was stuffed. Eventually, my dad was broken. He's like, lost my mom. Now he's going to lose the family business. I said, Dad, you actually just need to go home. You need to relax. You need to be able to go retire. Just get out of this, otherwise you're going to break. So at the age of 22, I took over the company. Then they had about 100 employees, and we were leaking badly. Like a lot of blood, literally, from the carcasses, but bleeding in our finances. And I just thought, like, how in the world does this happen? So I'm from a church at Common Ground. And so I've got that whole Christian sort of thing. I'm going to pray, God's going to do this thing. So I did the praying thing, and I sat in my office and going, okay, now what? Where's the money? God, where's the money? You know what I'm saying? There's a reality that dawned on me. There's a reality of going, hey, we need to be able to have your religious views, but also there's a practicality of growing in wisdom, growing in understanding of business. So I sat there, we did a whole lot of stuff. Eventually we worked it, and we had like major things. We had a 700,000 rand tax thing we had to pay from before. Our accountant hadn't paid 200,000 rand in water bills for 2 years. He left summarily. Our GM left to start a competitor company, and one of our suppliers started a company down the road from us. Those were all in the same year when I'm 22 years old trying to figure this out. Head banged a whole lot of lots, eventually turned the company around, which is a whole other story in itself, and then started growing, brought in partners, and just kept on going and going and going and going. The point of the story is this whole test of Duckworth research. Anybody heard about it? It's known as the marshmallow test. There's a person named Walter back in the 1960s, put a marshmallow in front of a whole lot of kids and said, take the marshmallow now or wait 15 minutes and I'll give you 2. And he found that most of the kids couldn't do it. Most of the kids would just grab that marshmallow and stuff their faces. What they found out years later when they reevaluated the kids, they found that those kids that succeeded in not eating the marshmallows years later had a tendency to be more successful in their high school careers. Weird. So this lady named Duckworth then took the test further, and she said, I wonder if the self-control thing is really the deciding factor between being successful and not. And she began to run a test. She took 1,200 cadets that were at West Point Military Academy in America, and they applied their test, their predictor of who would be successful. And they said, these are the candidates we think we're going to be successful. She applied her test on people that have got grit. She said it's just pure grit, the ability to sustain, the ability to get hit in the face and carry on going, the ability going, I don't care what happens, passionately, I'm going to pursue it. And she used her sort of grid, which was just simple 12 questions, and she predicted who would make it through West Point. And out of all the tests that would run, she got the most accurate predictor. They did the same thing years later with the National Bees test, which is how to do spelling words. They do that in America. Again, she managed to make all these predictions of the people that would be successful. So the thought she actually just said was the people that are most successful in business aren't IQ people. They aren't the people that have passed leadership track record. They aren't the people necessarily that are emotionally intelligent, etc., etc. It's actually the people that have grit. The people that have the unwavering ability to go, I'm going to hit this thing again and again and again and again, come what may. Make sense? So that's point number 1 around self-leadership. Breathe, please. So going back to the main grid, we're moving across from grit to simplicity leads to scalability. One of my favorite lines. The whole idea about simplicity leads to scalability is that our lives are so complex. Our businesses grow, they become more and more complex, more and more confusing. And the reality is we just need to bring it down to something that we all understand. Focus 80-20. We all know it's Pareto principle. If you listen to read Tim Ferriss's book 4-Hour Workweek, you'll see his simplistic line is he applies 80-20 to absolutely everything. 80% of your money is going to come from 20% of your problems. 80% of your money is going to come from 20% of your clients. 80% of your problems are going to come from 20% of your clients. 80% of your good staff production will come from 20% of your clients. Do this thing. He challenged us to do it, so I went and did it at my work, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's true. I realized that I was spending 80% of my time on our one hotel restaurant division that was only making less than 20% of the company profits. I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, obviously, the only time I don't want to do the 80-20 is with my doctor or with my pilot. That'll be a bit atrocious. But on everything else, try your 80-20. Keep focus. Find what the focus is. Everything else, eliminate. Actually be ruthless and cut it out and saying, I actually don't need that. It's clutching my life. It's actually not making things easy to understand. The reality is if you want to go, what is simple? I'm telling you, simple is when you can explain it to someone and they can explain it to someone else. The reality is that in this room, you probably got the highest capacity people of the company. For you to expect that other people are going to understand what you're doing is basically like 10%. I made that stat up. 9.5. It's going to be virtually impossible. Never expect that those people are going to be able to catch into what you're saying. So make it simple enough to be able to explain, and for the next person to explain it to the next. Make it simple enough to standardize, because if you can standardize it, then you can automate it. If you can automate it, then you can make it scalable. Make sense? Cookie cutter. I want to give you a quick thing of how one of the things we did. When in our company, we had hotels and restaurants, and we had our retail stores. The other thing with hotels and restaurants is hotels and restaurants want custom made, they return, they want credit terms, there's a whole lot of stuff, the whole lot of issues that go on. But our retail side, it was cash customers. They would pitch up at the place, they'd buy anything you had. If I didn't have pork shoulders, they'd go buy pork chops. But like on the hotel side, they're like, we want 100 pig shoulders. And what do you do with the rest of the pig? That's a question you've probably never been asked, eh? These are things I'm running on. It's like, how do I balance this thing? But everything was gut and intuitive. I knew how to do it because I've been doing it since I was 13. But I couldn't grow this thing because the time it took to train someone, it was huge. So I decided, actually, I'm going to cut this thing out. I'm going to focus on what is making the business money and what it gives me the highest return on my time. So you get ROE, return on equity. I like the ROT, the ROT, return on your time. What is the easiest thing to explain that people will get and we can able to replicate very easily? Does that make sense? And the whole thought is, because I could do that, I knew, flip, I can get out. And so what happened is, in last year in December, through all this stuff, I realized, flip, I can actually get out of this once I managed to put one of the other leaders in place, because we managed to simplify the system. I couldn't get a manager in place unless they could understand how the system works. So my thought is, whatever you're doing, simplify it so that you can reproduce the system, not necessarily having to do the person. Make sense? I'm going on. Last one, business leadership. The top point there is attract leaders. Oh my flip, this was phenomenal for me to understand this. Here's an easy line for you. The bigger your leader, the bigger your growth. Another Raymond Ackerman, another Mark Zuckerberg, another me, another you. The thought is, this is the principle. So there's Roger Warr. He runs a company that's 120 million rand. Theoretically, if I could find another Roger Warr, I should be able to run a company that's 240 million rand. I know it sounds nice, but that's the principle. If I found a third Roger Warr, that would be 360 million rand, etc., etc., etc. If I found a Mark Zuckerberg that was bigger than me, that was willing to work for me for whatever reasons, good looks, I've got free meat for him, I don't know, you'd be able to see that it would grow more and more and more. When you attract the right leaders, you're going to be able to grow. There is no flipping way, maybe in your industry, but in my industry, there's no flipping way of growing anything, any system without attracting leaders. When you're able to, if you increase your scalability system, attract more leaders that are able to do it. If you attract another you can get the same size. Theoretically, that makes sense. Yeah? So that's what I've been trying to do. Grew the one side of the company, one retail store to 4 retail stores, put an MD in the place, stepped out. Got another person to do the anchor food side of the manufacturing, stepped out, said, you go and do it. Because the reality is that we just need to keep this thing buoyant, keep it growing with your leaders that run the thing. Business strategy, put a lead in place, you're a happy man or woman. Or hermaphrodite, someone else said. So, here's some thoughts. I know practically we're going to ask these questions of good to great. There's a guy, do I get someone from outside or from inside? A guy named Jim Collins wrote a book, From Good to Great. He said most of the guys get the leaders from within. I'm not averse to that. I just think that it's important that you get people with 4 principles. This, I'm leaning onto one of the other topics I want to end with, is they asked the question to a couple of million people in the book, Strengths Finders Leadership. And the question was this: why do you follow? Who are the leaders that you follow? What are the reasons? They said, name a person and name 3 reasons why you follow that person. And through bringing all that information together, they came up with 4 points. 4 points why 10 million people said they follow. The first one was the person has integrity. They trust the person. If you're looking for leaders that you want to find, or you want to be a kind of leader, this is it. Be a person of integrity, honesty, trustworthy. What you say, you'll do. The second point was they're compassionate. They care about you, not what you can do for the company, not what you can do for the organization. They'll say things like, even if you leave the company, come have a coffee with me. They'll say, how's your family doing? How's your kids doing? Can I help out with your kids? Can I help out in a certain way? The third thing they said was stability. The person created a stable environment, stable place for the business that doesn't go up and down. The way that he handles himself isn't up and down. He's stable in the way he handles people. And the fourth thing is he's a hope creator. He always creates hope, creates vision, always lets people know there's a greater hope to come. These four things are the things you want to find in the leaders you recruit, and also you want to be that kind of leader. Make sense? When you do come to my next seminar, you can hear the rest of the points. I want to bring it to a conclusion. The big thought is this: don't think in terms of time. Don't think in terms of money. Think in terms of rands per hour. Change the economy. Work it out for yourself. What is your total income divided by your hour? Use that as your measurement and see how that increases over the years. There were 3 points that I said we should focus on. Grit, the leading determinant of success. Just be hard. Even if you're going through a tough time at work, even if things seem to be falling apart, focus your mind and just know that you're going to clap your head a couple of times, but you're going to succeed, because that becomes the determinant of success, which it seems in research. The second point of them is simplicity allows for scalability. Simplify, focus, do the basics, explain it to someone so they can explain it to someone else. Fourth point, attract leaders. Get those leaders that have those things of hope, stability, compassion, and integrity. The final thing is change the world with your time and your money. And the purpose of the talk isn't how to make more money. The purpose of the talk isn't how to do things with less time. The purpose of the talk isn't even about sustainability. The greater purpose is I want you guys, moms and dads, to be great fathers. I want you to be great mothers. I want you to be incredible husbands, incredible wives. I want you to be able to bless people beyond your borders. Unfortunately, in the economy we live in, we need to be able to make money with less time. And so that becomes the objective, which underscores the purpose. Thank you.